if one were to play bullshit bingo with a press release, I think just the first couple of lines of OLPC's press release would be pretty awesome. Breakthrough advances, revolutionary, unprecedented high performance, lower and lower, I'm surprised it didn't say lower and lower and lower cost, and so on and so forth. Yeah, innovation, of course, that's also an important aspect. Please take those kinds of information with a grain of salt, because first of all, predicting anything that's going to happen in 2012 is ridiculous to begin with. But I actually had fun with the whole thing. And so now get excited. This is world exclusive stuff. I can announce the EXO 10. It will actually produce electricity while in use. It won't just not cost anything, it will print money. It will fight climate change by consuming CO2. It will cure cancer, include the kitchen sink. The American folks always like that. And for you guys, it will brew blue powder. Turning back to reality, what's really happening right now? As I mentioned, at this very moment, more than 1 million children are using the XO and sugar on a daily basis for their learning, both inside school and outside school. It's hard to keep track because so many things are happening, but there's at least 30 countries around the world where OLPC is active at the moment. And what you've got to realize again, that what's the larger context within which OLPC is working. I've spent quite a bit of time now in the first part of the lecture talking about the technologies and laptops, but as I mentioned, it's really an education project. So to put it frankly, and of course a bit oversimplified, I think one of the big issues with education generally around the world today is that children are being prepared for tomorrow using yesterday's methods. Again, if you look at the history of education, that's not really a surprise, because the last time that educational systems, especially in Asia, Western Europe, and North America, actually underwent through big changes in industrialization. A lot of the issues that we're running into education right now are just very obvious if you look at this from this point of view. But then again, we really shouldn't complain, because if you look on a global level at primary education spending, and I'm not sure whether you know the project worldmapper.org, but it's a very awesome website. It basically allows you to display the countries of the world in depending on different variables and input. For example, in this place, on this map, the countries are basically sized depending on how much money is spent on primary education in the respective countries. Again, no surprise that North America and Europe is quite bloated, whereas some parts of Africa aren't really visible. Put into numbers, this is what things look like. Well, on average, about $3,000 is spent per student, so between age 0 and 15 in Austria. In Nepal, it's only $68 per year spent on education. So there's a massive gap, which results in situations like this one. When a lot of lesser developed countries, the average class size in primary schools is more than 100 people. I mean, you really wouldn't want to be a teacher in that class, right? Question is, what do things look like tomorrow? I think what's important is to realize that it's hard, as I said before, to predict anything that's happening in 2012, let alone 2020, but some core issues will definitely be that there will be jobs on a global market. Digitally connected devices will be a very basic tools of everyday living, of working, of learning, and you'll need 21st century skills. Skills that most of you in here have definitely in above average qualities and quantities, but for a lot of people, information literacy, critical thinking, innovation, sorry for the buzzword, creativity, open-ended problem solving, and technological fluency will be core skills to have in the future. And within this context, I think that David Cavallo, who's one of the education leads for OLPC, saying that laptops are the pencil for the digital age definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, looking at the advanced time we have, I got to jump a couple of slides and go forward to looking at what's really happening in a lot of the countries that actually have subscribed to this concept and approach to education now. First one I'd like to talk about briefly is Uruguay. Just some brief information about Uruguay. It's a fairly small place, 3.5 million inhabitants, fairly rich, about 500 euros average monthly income, high literacy, and on the UN's Human Development Index, they're actually doing quite well. Uruguay has distributed more than or almost 400,000 laptops to children in the country right now. That means that every child in a government-run public school between the 1st and 6th grade in Uruguay has a laptop today. So again, taking the notion of one laptop per child pretty damn seriously. And if you look at the cost, what's important, of course, that just the initial cost of the purchase of the machine isn't everything. You need to consider things like connectivity, like teacher training, like spare parts for repairs, and so on and so forth. They've calculated that the 4-year TCO is about $276 per child. So, I mean, that's not nothing, and it's still way too expensive for a lot of places, yeah? But for a country like Uruguay, that is quite feasible. And again, to talk about the scale of the project there, I mean, they've got their own stamp featuring the EXO in Uruguay. More than 2,000 schools are involved, almost 20,000 teachers, 1,500 volunteers. There's cooperation with the post office that basically allows everybody that if your EXO is broken, you can walk into any post office in Uruguay, say it's broken, they'll ship it to a repair facility and back to you free of charge. I mean, that's talking about scale. And there's a presentation at the link there that's quite interesting if you want to know more details. Another quick example I want to give is Nepal, especially because it's dear and close to my heart, as I had the chance to spend my summer there. Quite a different country, almost 30 million inhabitants. Average monthly income is approximately 30 euros. Literacy is less than 50%. And on the Human Development Index, it ranks pretty badly. And load shedding, which means cutting off electricity for many hours a day and in some regions for even weeks, is a big issue there. Again, I'd included Nepal up on the earlier table, so that gives you a good idea of the issues that are also facing in education. Now, what's important is that in Nepal, there's an independent NGO called OLI Nepal that's working on implementing OLPC in the country. They're obviously closely collaborating with the Ministry of Education, and they're quite a sizable organization by now, having 35 employees, especially considering that they were only funded 1.5 years ago. So just a quick run through a couple of things that they're doing. EPAT, which are interactive learning activities, unfortunately done at the moment in Flash, for the 3 subjects which their laptops are used in Nepal for, which is English, mathematics, Nepali. And what's important is not just that those are interactive learning activities, but they actually come with guidance documents to help the teachers actually use those digital learning activities within their classroom context. So that's a really important aspect. That's a screenshot of this there. ePustakalaya is a digital library, because in every school where OLI Nepal starts a project, they're actually installing a server which features this digital library with approximately, I think last time I counted 300 or 400 books installed of them. So even, I mean, a lot of those places don't have internet connectivity at the moment, but they can still access 300 and in the future more books that are stored locally in the basically digital library of the school. Another very important project that we're working on at the moment is Karma, which is a FLOSS toolkit for creating interactive learning activities. This is just getting started. Version 0.2 was released, I think, 2 weeks ago, and it's based on HTML5 and JavaScript, and the idea is to get rid of Flash, because Flash has got a lot of issues, not just that it's proprietary, but for example, that you can't use Nepali script. It's not natively supported in Flash. So every time in Nepal they actually want to include a text within a learning activity, they got to take a freaking screenshot and then paste the screenshot, because there's just no way to support things like that. Very annoying, but you should check it out. It's at karmaeducation.org. And that's one of the screenshots there, a learning activity designed for Uruguay to learn about the geography of the country and about cities. Again, power being an issue in a lot of places, so they've designed simple charging racks, because in a lot of schools, and those schools that I visited in Nepal, there's no AC power plug, it's just 2 blank wires coming out of the wall. And of course, you don't want to expose young children to that. So they've built simple charging racks that work really well and help keep the children safe. In terms of connectivity, they're trying to build up networks between the schools, and by early 2010, they actually want to have at least a 1 megabit connection to every school that they're using that they've started an OLPC project at the moment. So again, I mean, once you bring the connectivity to a school, of course the whole community can benefit from that, because children's got the devices, the parents can use them on the weekends or whatever, and you just